Hello. In today's video, we're going to talk about dictionaries in Python. So dictionaries are similar to lists in that they hold a collection of values. So each value in a dictionary is referenced by a key. So what I mean by that is, so for example, a list. Let's make a list here. So let's say L1 is 1, 2, 3. So this list L1 has 3 elements. And each of these elements are accessed using an index. So for example, the element here is index 0, this is index 1, and this is index 2. Right? So a list can basically contain any type of element in it, but the thing that cannot be changed is that the items in a list have to be accessed using integer indices. What I mean by that is you cannot use, let's say, a string, for example, to access any of these elements here. And also, lists are ordered. So this is always element 0, this is element 1, and this is element 2. So if you want to change that, you would have to go and change the list. So if I shuffle these around, so now this is element 0, 1, 2. So the order in a list is important. Right? So dictionaries are similar to lists in that they hold key value pair. They hold a collection of elements, but we get to choose what the data type of the indexing variable is. So you'll see what I mean by that in a second. So we have a dictionary here. So this has one key and one value. Right? So this value is actually referenced by a string, which is key in this case. So if we want to get the element value from this dictionary, what we would do is we would say, if we want to print it, for example, we would say print the name of the dictionary, and we would call the get method on the dictionary, and we would pass in the key, and that's how we actually get a value out of a dictionary. So let's say we want to print something from this list here. So how would we do that? We would say print 1 of 2. So this, for example, will give us the value 3, right? So this is how we index, or we get a value from a list. So we just use the index of the list to get the value because, like I said, lists are ordered. So index 2 will always be this. But when it comes to a dictionary, so dictionaries are not ordered. So elements in a dictionary are referenced using the key, but internally, we can never be sure of the order in which they're actually stored in memory, right? So what I mean by that is we have another dictionary here called week 1, which has a bunch of key value pairs in it. So the first key is Monday and has a value. The second key is Tuesday and has another value. But in memory, we can never be sure that this value right here is stored before the value here. Right? So lists, you can think of a list as arranging things on a table, right? So you arrange them in a specific order, and then, so let's say you want the first element in your list, right? So then you would go and pick the first element that you arrange. So the order actually matters, but then you can think of a dictionary as throwing a bunch of stuff into a bag, but each of the things you actually put into the bag have a label on them. So there is no particular order to your items, but to retrieve a particular item, you would go and search for the particular label that you're looking for. In this case, when it comes to dictionary, the label is called a key, right? Okay. So we have three dictionaries here. So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and these have information about the days in that particular week. Well, almost all of not all of them, but almost. So it has the name of the day as the key and the maximum temperature of that particular day as the value. So as you can see, the keys are strings and the values in this case are floating point numbers. Right, so okay, before we look at anything else, let's quickly go over how we make a list. Let's talk about the syntax real quick. Okay, so you would so this is a variable, this is a dictionary. So you would make a dictionary using curly braces, right? So we'd have an opening and a closing curly brace, and inside the dictionary you would have a key like so, and a value. So the key and the value have to be separated by a colon. And each of the key value pairs in the dictionary are separated by a comma. Okay, so let's look at a couple of ways of, or before that, let's actually run this program here and let's see what this prints. So this is printing the list. So list of L1 of 2 is actually 3. And this is printing the value of this key from the dictionary, so which is the word value. Okay, so let's look at a couple ways we can access things from a dictionary. So here are two ways we can do it. So the dictionary week 1, like I said, has information about the maximum temperature of the days of that particular week. So let's say we want to get the maximum temperature of Friday, right? So we could either say week1.get Friday like we did before, or we can access the element Friday or the value of the key Friday using the list notation, right? So square brackets. So these are essentially the same. So when we run this program, W and X will have the exact same value. So if you run this, right, so 22.7, let's see if that's correct. Yes, Friday is indeed 22.7. Okay. So these are two ways of accessing a value from a dictionary. So a difference between these two methods of access is, so let's say we were trying to look for a key that does not exist in the dictionary. So for example, today, the key today, so week 1 does not contain the key today, right? So if we try to access this particular key using the get notation, it would actually give us a none value. But if we try to access the key using the list notation, it would actually throw us an exception. Right, so let's try to print Y and Z. So if you can see here, line 40 is actually throwing an exception because the key today does not exist in our dictionary, but we're still trying to look for it. So if we comment these two lines out, you should see that this line of code still works. It does not crash the program, but it gives us a none value. That means that this key does not exist in the dictionary. Okay. So another way of making dictionaries is using the dictionary keyword. And so this line of code here is making a dictionary called month, which has the keys W1, W2, W3, W4 for each of the weeks of the month. And the values for these keys are actually the dictionaries we saw up here. So dictionaries can have any data type for their keys and values, basically. But the only catch is the keys of the dictionary have to be immutable. So what I mean by immutable is it cannot be an object that can be changed in place. So for example, you cannot use a list as a key for a dictionary, but you can, however, use a tuple because a tuple is immutable. It cannot be changed. Right? So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so let's see how we can print a dictionary. Let's say we want to print the dictionary week 1, like completely, everything in the dictionary. So we would just say print week 1, and there you go, that's week 1. Right, so that's how you print entire dictionaries. You would just say print and put the dictionary in parentheses. That's it. Okay, so let's see what the dictionary we just made, the month dictionary actually has. So if we print this, so like I said, dictionaries don't have a particular order. So if you see here, W4 got printed first, even though the first key we actually put in there was W1. So W4 is our key, and then the value associated with this key is actually another dictionary. So if you see here, it's week 4. And then W3, W2 right here, and there's W1. So if you want to see the entire contents of a dictionary for some reason, you could just print it out like this. Okay, so let's see how we can get. So let's say we made this dictionary month and we want to get the temperature of Monday in week 2. Right, so this is how we would do that. So how this works is month is a dictionary. So we want to get the value associated with week 2. So this part is getting the value associated with week 2 from the dictionary month. But that value is in turn a dictionary. So we would need to go. So we're interested in accessing the value for Monday from this dictionary. So then we would say W2 of Monday. So this should print 35.4. Yep, there we have it, 35.4. So we could also use the get method here. So we could say something like so these should produce exactly the same result. Yeah, there we go. So we got 35.4 again. All right, so how are dictionaries internally represented? or implemented. So dictionaries are implemented using what's called a hash table. So how hash tables work is you use the value itself to determine where you actually store that particular value. So what I mean is you run the value through a some sort of mathematical formula, and then so whatever the answer of the formula is where you actually store that particular value. Right? So if you want to learn more about how dictionaries are internally implemented in Python, you can go and look at this link. So this is the official documentation of for Python. Right? So they briefly talk about how it actually works. All right, so like lists, dictionaries can be altered. Right? So if you want to go and change the value of Monday in week 1 to 44, we can do that using this syntax. So we would say week 1 of Monday is 44. So if we print week 1 now, so what the value of Monday for week 1 before was 35.4. So we now change it to 44. So if we print it again, it's now changed to 44. Okay, so what if we actually want to go and get all the keys in a particular dictionary? So we would say we would use a for loop. We would say for key in week 1. So this is the same syntax for accessing elements in a list. But if you use it on a dictionary, it only gives us the keys of the dictionary. So there we go. These are the keys of dictionary week 1. So there's also a method called keys in the dictionary class, which basically does the same thing. It returns all the keys of a dictionary. So we could both of these for loops here produce the same answer. Right, so if you run this, we should see the keys printed twice. Or if you want them on a single line, we could just say print week1.keys like this. Because week1.keys actually, I mean, the keys method returns a list. So if we try to print week1.keys, it actually prints a list. So similarly, if you want to print all the values in the dictionary instead, we can use the get method. So we would cycle through all the keys in the dictionary and use the get method to get the corresponding values. So if we run this, so there are all the values in the week 1 dictionary. So or we could use the values method, which basically does the same thing. So if we run this, we should get the same result. So like the keys method, the values method also returns a list. So we could also say print values, and there we go. We have it in a list form now. Okay, so what if we want to print all the key value pairs in the dictionary? So we would use the items method. So what the items method does is it returns two things. So in Python, you can actually return two separate objects from a function. So the items function returns the key and the value for all the items in the dictionary. So as you can see here, this is the first key value pair, the second, third, and so on. Okay, what if we want to know whether a particular key actually exists in our dictionary. So there are two ways of doing that. So we have the hasKey function, which takes in a key and then returns either true or false to indicate whether that particular key exists or not. Or the recommended way of doing it is to actually go ahead and use the in keyword. So we could say something like if Monday in week 1 print found, so this should print found twice. Right, so that's because this key actually exists in the dictionary. Okay, so how would we add something to a dictionary that's already made? Right, so week 3, for example, if we go up and look at week 3, so week 3 does not have information for Sunday, as you can see here. So if you want to add that in, we would say week 3 of Sunday is something. Right, so this is using the list notation again. So then if we print week 3 after adding Sunday, we should see, so there we go, there's Sunday. So if we want to remove something from a list, we would use the pop function. So we just added Sunday into list 3 and now we are trying to remove it. So if we remove it and print it again, so if you can see here, we do have Sunday. That's because we added it here and printed it out. And here we actually got rid of it again. So this line does not have Sunday. So like I said, the keys of a dictionary have to be mutable. So they have to be objects that cannot be changed. So a tuple, for example, can be a valid key to a dictionary. But so if you run this, the program runs fine. There are no errors. But then if I try to uncomment this line, so this here we're trying to use a list as a key. So this is not okay. So if we try to run this, it's actually going to give us an error. So it's saying unhashable type list. So like I said, dictionaries actually use hash tables internally. So that's why it's saying this particular type list cannot be hashed. So always use types that cannot be, or objects that cannot be changed as keys. Okay, so let's look at a couple of examples of things we can do with a dictionary. All right, so let's say we have two lists and then we want to make a dictionary out of these two lists. So these are our keys and these are the corresponding values. Right, so how would we do that? So we would declare an empty dictionary and then, this is not the only way of doing it, but this is definitely one of the easier ways of doing it. So we go through all the keys, we go through the length of the list keys. So there are 3 of them here. And then we would say dictionary of keys of I. So initially I is 0. So dictionary 2 of OS, for example, will get the value Mac OS. RAM gets 64 and ROM gets 128. So if we print this dictionary here, so there's our dictionary. So here's a more compact way of doing the same thing we did here. So if you want to go and look at how this works, feel free to do so. So these 3 lines of code and this line basically do the same thing. So if we try to run this, it should give us the same result. Oh, dictionary 2. Yep, there it is. Okay, so the next example we're going to look at is to remove duplicate values from a dictionary. So if you can see here, the color blue is repeated twice, but we want it to occur just once in the dictionary. So how would we do that? So declare an empty list, go through all the keys in the dictionary, and we try to check if the value associated with the key is in this list or not. If it's not, then we add it into this list. But if it already exists in the list, then so here's where we add it in. But if it already exists, then we pop that particular value, key value pair, off the list. So that's done right here. Right, so if you run this, we should. Right, so now the color blue only appears once. Okay, that's almost everything I wanted to talk about. So here's the link to the official documentation for dictionaries. So feel free to look at that. And here's a link to a bunch of exercises related to dictionaries if you want to go try some of them. So all of this code is going to be available in my class account. So that's CS15160 under the April 18 directory if you want to go get it. And apart from that, if you have any questions, feel free to contact your instructor. And thanks for watching.